Hi and welcome back to the channel. My name is Disco. Glad to have you here. Today we're going to be going over the Yamaha MR10 personal studio system drum machine. As you can see here, it's pretty standard fare. Along the top is our row of selector switches for different variations and rhythm. The button here will select between the top row, which consists of disco, jazz rock, slow rock, swing, waltz, and march. And the bottom row will have 16-beat, samba, mambo, rumba, bossa nova, and tango. You do have rhythm variations in normal, 4-bar, and 8-bar. And that just means at the end of every 4 or 8 bars, if you have those selected, it'll do a little turnaround, fill in. Here in the knobs, we have tempo, tuning, which affects the snare, high and low toms. Does not affect the bass or kick drum. The bass drum volume, the cymbal volume, and then the overall master volume. If you turn that all the way down, it will turn off. Hence the power / volume. Here we got start and stop, and you can see the flashing LED is notating the tempo we're at. Start stop button, bass drum, snare drum, high tom, low tom, and cymbal. So we're just going to go through the individual sounds, the rhythms, how the knobs kind of affect everything, and then some little quirks I've found while owning this drum machine. So first, the individual sounds. We have bass drum. As you can see, my bass drum volume, I'm only at 12 o'clock. And it's pretty meaty, pretty beefy. Snare drum. High tom. Low tom. And the cymbal, which is really more like an open hi-hat. You may notice the snare drum is essentially the same as the high tom, but with some added white noise. So these are not samples. Obviously, these are purely synthesized sounds, so they do have a very 80s synth kind of timbre texture to them. You can hear that these are basically the same tone, just the snare drum has some added white noise. In the cymbal, there isn't a way that I found to get a closed hi-hat. It's pretty much just an open hi-hat, although within the different rhythms, there is a closed hi-hat sound. My guess is it's just the one cymbal sound, but with a much faster cutoff would be my guess. For the tuning knob, if we play around with the toms and I turn the tuning knob up, you'll hear that it does get higher in there. We're maxed out, so it is kind of fun to it's almost like a rototom. If you're a percussionist and you're familiar with that, it's a bit like a rototom. You can kind of adjust the tuning as you play it. And that's with the low tom. It should affect the snare drum because essentially, like I said, that's just the high tom with some added white noise. It does have a slight effect on the cymbal. if you're listening on headphones or really good speakers, you can probably hear that slight note, musical note. As it changes. Typically in my use, I've found that keeping it tuned all the way down kind of just has the most musical, is the most musical setting. The bass drum and cymbal volume, along with the tempo, are really only going to affect the rhythms. So we'll start those now. Here I've got the bass drum volume turned all the way down. You can hear the bass drum is completely removed. This is the 16 beat rhythm. We'll bring that up to a conservative volume, and then we'll take out the cymbals. And you can see, even though I hit the cymbal button, it won't override that when you're playing a rhythm. So these are pretty much global. If we turn the bass drum volume down, nothing comes out. So just know, if you do ever get one of these, you are not able to, say, remove the cymbals and then add in your own as it's playing along. You would have to layer it in and kind of mesh the two together. So I'll try and go through each of the rhythms a little bit, demonstrate a little bit of the fill-ins and turnarounds, and then I'll show you some of the good stuff. Here we have disco. And there you just heard the fourth bar turnaround. We'll do jazz rock. Slow rock. Has a bit of a 6/8 feel, which I like. And on the 4-bar turnaround, you can hear the hi-hat kind of double up a little bit. I'll let it go through one more time. The other ones, like swing, waltz, and march, are pretty standard fare. Waltz is a 3/4. I think march is also 3/4, but a little different. Okay, march is not 3/4, but you can tell it's already a faster pace than the waltz was, and it has that sort of snare, high tom, sort of eighth note run at the end, which I kind of like. Next, we'll move on to the bottom row. This is 16 beat, probably my most used one. And I'm going to do that again. I'm going to take out the cymbals this time. Not terribly exciting, but it does allow for more rhythmic, fluctuations, so you can so it's cool. You can kind of like blend it, bring it back in and out at different times. Just for added artistic and creative effect. Next, samba. Now, samba, mambo, and rumba, and bossa nova. Pretty much all of these they're cool. I haven't found much use for them on their own, I will say though. But once you start mixing them in with other ones, things get pretty interesting. Here's mambo. Just getting a little dust bunny off. And you may notice the bossa nova, just like the waltz above it, is a much slower pace compared to the other ones. Even though our tempo hasn't really changed, it's at almost like a half-time speed. So that does give you a little more freedom as far as the tempo knob goes compared to the others, because the tempo actually gets pretty fast and pretty slow. I haven't done any like measurements to see what the actual BPM range is, but maybe I'll do that in another video. And tango, kind of like the march above it, is pretty much the same throughout until the very last beat or two, where you have the snare drum or high tom drum run. Say that 5 times fast. Let's go back to 16 beat. We'll demonstrate the tempo. I'm going to turn it down here. That was the absolute slowest. Now I'll put it back up to about where it was, and we'll go up from there. As you can see, we haven't even hit max speed, and it's pretty fast. Here we go. Yeah. For pretty much everything except like the waltz and bossa nova, which we'll try out now, fast is almost unusable. We'll start at 3 o'clock and see where we get. We'll switch it to waltz. A little easier to keep track of time than the like mambo and rumba and bossa nova rhythms. As you hear, this is a little bit more usable, and we are higher up than we even started with on the 16 beat. And again, since the bossa nova is so busy at the fastest speeds, it's not really usable, but I'm sure someone could find a use for it. So now, what I want to demonstrate is pretty much the fun part that I kind of happened to stumble across while using this. Now, my thought process when I stumbled upon this was, well, I can push these buttons down, they kind of lock in place. And probably kind of hear it in the mic. I'll see if I can make it a little louder, but anyway. It's probably hard to tell from this angle that the camera's at. But if you just lightly push in, you can get the last one that was fully depressed to pop up. But, well, if there's some sort of locking mechanism, then maybe there's a way to get both of them depressed, which be able to tell at that angle. Oh. You can definitely tell here, I've got this one and that one pushed in. So the interesting thing here is that you can essentially blend two rhythms, and what the drum machine will do is effectively play bits of both as it goes through the full 4 or 8 bars. It doesn't really increase in volume, it's just most steps that are overlapping. If, say, there's a kick drum or a snare drum, it'll choose one or the other. It'll pretty much just stick with that. It won't change or morph over time or anything like that. Which, if it did, that'd be really cool. But for the most part, it kind of just picks and chooses, and it's the same thing every time, but just picks and chooses, you know, the and of beat 3 is going to be this, beat 2 will always be this. But it's pretty interesting to play around with. So again, the top portion of rhythms are going to be a little bit more easier to meld together than the bottom ones, just because the samba through tango, because they're so busy and they don't always, circle back around to the one beat, they don't mesh quite near as interestingly. So first I'll start with disco, and I'll kind of combine it with other ones as it's going on. So I'm going to switch to 8 bar just so we have a little bit more time before the fill at the end. There I had disco and jazz rock combined. I held them down just to make sure it went all the way through. But if you get good, you can, hit them both at the same time. So here's disco and slow rock. You can hear there on the fill, it dropped the bass drum. It like you expect it to be there, and it wasn't there. But you might have heard the hi-hat kind of I'll do it again. I switched to the 4-bar in between there, and that kind of reset it and made it get weird, so. Kind of interesting. And I really think this one's interesting because, you know, with the disco, you have that upbeat open hi-hat. On swing, you have that fully just open cymbal. But when you combine them, it is mostly the swing, but I think you hear more of the disco in the turnaround. Yeah, waltz and disco are probably the most interesting so far that I've found just doing this demo, because it brings the waltz back up to the tempo of, say, the disco, but also that's where you really get a little bit of both. You know, if we just did one, super slow, do disco, but when you combine them, I really like what the hi-hat does in that. There we go. What's interesting about these is you probably heard there's the regular open hi-hat, the cymbal, but the disco beat actually has a slightly different open hi-hat sound. Listening in. Here's just disco. Here's March. You know, and it's got that kick drum and open hi-hat on beats 1 and 3. So when we combine them, it's cool that you get both. You know, since the disco different open hi-hat is on the upbeats, it's not interfering with the downbeats of the march, so you get both. We'll go down to the bottom. I think, yeah, we'll just start where we were. Tango and 16-beat. I usually like mixing the more standard 16-beat or disco with the other ones. If you do get one of these, you can mix a slow rock and swing together. In fact, let's just see what that sounds like right now. Not bad. Let's do jazz, rock, and waltz. I kind of like that. Waltz seems like a good one to mix in with the others, so I think if we go down to the bottom here, 16-beat and bossa might be pretty interesting, because I think what's going to happen is it's going to bring bossa nova up to the same tempo as the 16-beat. Of course, the tempo is still the same, it's just that it's not at halftime anymore, so... I really like that because you get this really, really short, almost like a hi-hat just being closed. Yeah, really cool stuff. Let's try 16 beat and mambo. And kind of interesting because you're getting a lot of toms, but also you are getting the hi-hat on the downbeats, and so is it lifelike? No, not really. Does it need to be? No, of course not. Let's get a little crazy though. And we'll do rumba and bossa nova. Yeah, it's okay. It's not bad. Now, I know you may be thinking, well, we're doing 2 at a time. Could we do 3? And I believe the answer is yes. It does require to actually... Well, you can actually do that, so... Let's see what disco, swing, and waltz sounds like together. In fact, I'm going to try and add them in over time. We'll see what happens. Here's just disco by itself. And then every 4 bars through, I'll try and add one in. Didn't quite work out. I think it did, but I didn't really hear a lot of change. The hard part is getting all 3 to stick at once. Now that's kind of cool because we had disco and slow rock going at once, but then when I brought in March, you heard more of the open hi-hat. Let me show you again. We got disco and slow rock. Now that was disco, slow rock, and swing. Now I've got the first 4. So there at the end I had disco, jazz, slow rock, and swing. And I think they don't really start to mesh after choosing 2 because a lot of those will have notes that overlap. And like I said, the basic computer, I don't even know if you really call it a computer, but the system itself is really, like I said, choosing one from one of those that are selected for each beat and just sticking with that. So, you know, if jazz rock and slow rock, you know, both say have a kick drum on beats 1 and 3, well, it's not going to add another kick drum elsewhere. So it's a pretty interesting little drum machine. If anything, it's cool just to have the built-in sounds. Can't forget the cymbal. To use for sound design or to make your own drum kits. I've certainly made a few by EQing or adding distortion. You could, you know, probably run this through guitar pedals if you were so inclined. I've got it hooked up with a guitar cable right now. So it's a pretty interesting little machine. You know, it doesn't have a sequencer. You can't, you know, enter a particular tempo, like say I want to do 105. You know, it can't really do that. But if you're decent in your DAW, with, you know, taking just 4 bars, splicing it, and then, you know, stretching it to a tempo or adjusting your project tempo to its tempo. Although that's a lot more difficult because, you know, this is just a, it's just a you know, potentiometer essentially. There's no telling if it's actually using some sort of graded scale. So if the voltage is between 2 values, it's hard set to, you know, a round number. Haven't dug that far into it, but it's a cool little machine. You know, if you like the video, let me know. Give it a thumbs up. I don't really do this for subscribers or for likes or to become an influencer. I just like sharing cool stuff, and hopefully you think it's cool too. Bye.